you're live now, Chair.
Okay, thank you all very much. Thanks for your patience. I've got to read a statement out first, which is the norm. This planning committee meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with the coronavirus regulations and the remote meetings protocol agreed by the council, which will operate alongside the council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind members that this meeting is being live streamed to the public. Can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking to ensure there is no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. The Council's standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during this virtual meeting in the same way as ordinary meetings, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Can I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and to use that facility to indicate to me as chair when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. For the benefit of everyone watching on the live stream, when I invite members to cast their votes on any particular item, they will do so physically, and that's already been explained earlier in the meeting. The results of any vote will be recorded and announced by Democratic Services. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this remote meeting will be uploaded onto the council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the council. The next item on the agenda are apologies.
No apologies have been received, Chair.
Is Carmel Townsend present? I
can't see her online, sorry, Councillor.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, declarations of interest. To ask if there are any members wishing to make a declaration of interest, and if so, on which matter. If there are any, please email democraticservices@newport.gov.uk and the planning clerk will fill out the form after the meeting. Thank you. Next item on the agenda are the minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of September 2020, and they're on page 5 of your paperwork. Will somebody who was present propose that they're a correct record, please?
True record, Chair.
Thank
Seconded,
you.
Chair.
Seconded, thank you. All agree?
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed.
Okay. The next. Thank you. Sounds like an echo chamber. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda for this planning committee meeting is item 1, which is on page 15 of your paperwork. It's application number 20-0489. The site is Windmill Farm, Llanfacres. The ward is Langstone. The ward members are Councillors William Routley and Ray Mogford. The presenting officer is Joanne Davidson. There is public speaking. The first public speaker will be Sally Ann Jenkins, applicant, and the ward members have indicated a desire to speak, Councillors William Routley and Ray Mogford. If I could go back to the presenting officer, Joanne Davidson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Chair, could you please confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. As the chair has said, this is the first item on the agenda. The details are on this first slide. The application is for a ground floor wraparound extension and first floor gable extension to existing farmhouse, and its change of use to a residential care home in use class C2 for up to 6 residents, including overnight accommodation for 1 member of staff. It also includes the construction of a detached single-storey residential annex to be used in association with the home, the demolition of agricultural buildings to provide parking and turning areas, the widening and resurfacing of the existing access and access track, including the provision of a new gate and other associated works in relation to drainage. The item is being reported to Planning Committee for decision as the site is council-owned land and the council is applicant. Now, as a point of clarification, the committee is able to determine an application made by a council department and on council-owned land. The site is hatched on the plan in front of you now. The site is in countryside, as you can tell. It's also special landscape area. I'm just going to show you an aerial. We've circled the site in red here. It's located in an isolated position east of the village of Llanfacus. The site has no near neighbours and is surrounded by agricultural land, which at time of site visits was being used primarily for sheep grazing. All land beyond the application site will remain in agricultural use. The introduction of the officer report sets out the key elements of the proposal, and the slides I'm going to show you will hopefully assist you with that. The key components of the scheme are the change of use of the farmhouse and curtilage to use class C2, which is a residential care home. We know in this particular case that this will be for children in need of care. The farmhouse will also be extended at ground floor and a gable added. I'm just going to talk you through some slides now to give you a better impression of the site. So this is a closer in shot of the aerial, and what you're looking at here is, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
You can. Oh, great. Okay. So you're seeing the farmhouse there under my cursor, and then these are ancillary agricultural buildings currently on the site and a small yard. Okay, this is a plan. You can see the farmhouse again on the left-hand side of this shot. All the buildings that you can see in that sort of orangey brown colour are buildings that are to be demolished. So you can see we've got an existing brick-built structure here that is going to be retained along with the farmhouse itself. This is a proposed layout plan, and again here's the farmhouse for reference purposes, but this is just showing the wider proposal, because you can see the track going up to the public highway or lane. You can see the changes proposed to the access and the widening or partial widening of the track to allow some passing to take place. And you can also hopefully make out the proposed extension to the farmhouse here, and a proposed new annex building also to be used as part of the care home here, and then this parking and circulation space here. As I mentioned, the proposal does include the construction of a new detached annex building, which will be used in conjunction with the main house. The annex, which is where my cursor is now, will provide more accommodation for up to 2 individuals, likely older children, that would benefit more from a degree of independence from the main house, which will accommodate up to 4 children with associated communal and staff spaces. A detailed list of the proposal is set out at paragraph 7.1.3 of the officer report, and the relevant policies in the council's local development plan are set out at section 5.1 of the officer report. To confirm though, in terms of the operational development, the extension to the dwelling is on brownfield land and other works are proposed on greenfield land for planning policy purposes. Okay, so the site itself is a typical county farm site. I'll go back to some of these photographs in a moment. It's got a relatively modest farmhouse situated close to a variety of farm buildings. So the photos you're looking at now are of the farmhouse. The other buildings on the site are a variable construction. So this is actually the building to be retained, which is brick built, as you can see. But then you can see behind it, we've got other buildings, typically agricultural, that are to be removed. And here's some more. So the Dutch barn will go. That's another view. This barn will go, this one here. And this outbuilding here will also go. This photograph in the bottom right of my slide here is the site of the proposed annex. You can just see the farmhouse in the background. So this building will go and the annex will be situated in this position. A parking and turning area, let's take it back to the plan a second. So a parking and turning area will be situated in the area of the existing yard and Dutch barn. So the Dutch barn is roughly in this position and the yard here. And as I say, the new single-storey building will be situated in place of the building. Let's go back. Marked outbuilding 2 on this plan. Now the existing access, as I showed you on this slide, is going to be enlarged in part to include a passing bay, which you should be able to make out here. This has the effect of improving visibility also at the point of access and allows 2 vehicles to pass without need to reverse into the adjoining lane, which is what you'd have to do at present. The lane is narrow and infrequently trafficked, yet the alterations proposed are considered beneficial as visibility when egressing the site is very limited at present. The Head of City Services has confirmed these works are acceptable and planning officers are also satisfied with these changes, subject to appropriate conditional controls over replacement landscaping, drainage and implementation of the works. So I'm just going to show you a photograph of the existing access. I showed it briefly earlier. There's the existing access and track. These are images taken from Google Street View and it's just able to give you that wider perspective of the neighbouring lane also. Okay, let's just go back to these slides. This slide shows the farmhouse and the proposed works to extend it. So this gable is proposed and this extension is the proposed. And there we're seeing all the relevant elevations. On a floor plan, this is the extension at ground floor, and at first floor it's just expanding the existing first floor accommodation. The single-storey annex building, which is an entirely new building, is shown here. And the layout of that one, as I said, for up to 2 individuals, allows a little bit more independence. is on that slide. Okay. Now the main issues, and we'll talk through some of these slides again in a moment, we've set out in the officer report. The key issues in our view are, as we've listed on this slide, so sustainability and general principle, effect on character and appearance and landscape, the need for the scheme, amenity, crime and disorder, access, circulation and parking, ecology and biodiversity enhancements, and then more minor issues are mineral safeguarding, protection of aquifers, landscaping, agricultural potential and drainage. Now all of those issues are discussed in some depth in the written officer assessment and have been considered. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'll focus on some of those issues. So turning first then to the issue of sustainability, this is in countryside and is a less sustainable location. It is clear to officers that the home will either entirely or almost entirely be reliant upon private vehicle for access. We accept that there will be traffic generated by the lawful fallback use as a farm, but we also accept that the proposed use is expected to generate more vehicular movements than the fallback. However, the use, once operational, will generate small vehicle type traffic, whereas the farm itself could realistically be expected to attract both light and heavier vehicle types. This traffic will continue in some form to serve the retained agricultural land use that surrounds the site. There is considered to be some worsening in terms of likely traffic generated by the proposal, and having regard to its unsustainable location, policy SP1 of the local development plan is not complied with. This is policy SP1, in case you're not familiar with it. So we're saying the proposal doesn't accord with that policy. However, in relation to traffic and highway safety, no highway capacity concerns are raised by the head of city services. Okay, so turning to other key policies in this case, there's been SP5, which is countryside, and SP8, which relates to special landscape areas. We consider that the extension of the farmhouse, let's just take you back to that. Okay, we consider the extension to the farmhouse is acceptable and accords with those policies. It will alter the appearance of the dwelling, but in a way that we consider acceptable. We have also noted that under permitted development rights, the house could be extended of a comparable scale, or even its entire replacement with a 30% enlargement in volume would be feasible under current planning policies in the local development plan. The design and scale of the proposed extension are considered acceptable. The annex extension will result in a very minor extension of the curtilage, but this is considered also acceptable in this case. The building is quite large and will have a footprint of approximately 16 metres by 5 metres, with a mono-pitched roof, as you can see, to an approximate height of 4.45 metres. However, again, we are conscious that permitted development rights within domestic curtilages allow for sizable extensions, and there are large existing buildings on site that add to overall built form. Many of these, as you can see on this slide, are to be demolished, and those being retained help to rationalise the built envelope on the site. And the proposed additions in terms of both the house extension and the annex are designed in a way that is considered sympathetic to the local topography and the landscape. The proposed parking and circulation space will be situated in an area currently occupied by the Dutch barn and hard surfaced yard. This is effectively outside the existing domestic curtilage, but does not extend the built envelope of the farm. This space will provide parking for staff primarily and will offer some benefit in terms of drainage, as we'll see the removal of impermeable surface and replacement with permeable area and a managed drainage system. We discuss drainage matters in more depth at paragraph 8.5 of the officer report. So overall, the site sits into the existing topographical layout in this area, such that it is not overly prominent in the wider rural landscape. Just going to take you back to the photographs. The proposals, although they include some new building, will not make the site more prominent or harmful to the rural landscape, as they have been designed and sited in a way that preserves such character, and the overall extent of built form on site will be reduced. Turning then to the other material considerations that we've had regard to, key to this case is need for the facility, and more so need for the facility in this location. Such considerations can be weighed in the balanced planning judgment in this and all cases, and officers have assessed this in detail in the written report. We know that the site is owned by the council. We also know that the council has a social care responsibility to vulnerable children and safeguarding these children and their well-being. We are advised by the applicant that there is no comparable facility for these children within the Newport administrative area, and currently the social service is placing children in need of care within establishments such as this outside of Newport, often many miles away, and this service is part of the council's budgeting responsibilities. Now, the home will provide short-term accommodation for up to 6 children who, for reasons that are not relevant to this determination process, will benefit significantly from the environmental qualities and the isolated location of this site and the overall service and care it can offer. Its purpose is for respite, care and protection of such children for the period required, although we are advised that social services do not anticipate the home being used for longer term residential care of individuals. The location and layout of the site also offers opportunities for staff to effectively manage the needs of the user group in an environment where all parties involved in the provision and receipt of the service are more likely to see positive outcomes. Overall, there are significant benefits arising from the scheme as proposed, but officers are conscious that these benefits are very much connected to the intended use and size and nature of the user group identified by the applicant. Such benefits may be less significant in other cases, and a condition is considered reasonable to ensure the management and operation of the home accords with the details provided in these respects. So condition 9 is recommended to achieve that. So the plan imbalance then is the objection raised by the inherent unsustainability of the site and the fact that care homes for children can and are located within urban areas, weighed against the benefits arising from the proposal as set out in this case, and the overall need for it to be located in this rural location, its seclusion and significant distance from the urban area, which offer a quiet and green environment judged by the applicant to be of real benefit to the user group and not currently available within the Newport area. There is no evidence that there will be any highway capacity issues nor increased risk to other road users. The access upgrades will be beneficial and will raise the current substandard access to a standard acceptable under Manual for Streets guidance. The lack of local facilities is not a great disadvantage to the user group, given most of their needs will be met in the home rather than in the general community. On this basis, officers conclude that on balance the proposal is acceptable, given that the specific needs of the user group, the number of intended occupants and the locational requirements for the proposed facility in a secluded, quiet and green location outweigh the harm to sustainability, and that planning permission should be granted subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. Hear me now, everybody?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'll repeat myself then. Thank you, Joanne, for that very detailed report. We now move on to public speakers, and the first public speaker is Sally Ann Jenkins, who's head of Newport City Council's Young People Services. Thank you, Sally Ann.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. My name is Sally Jenkins. I'm Head of Children and Young People Services within the Council. I'd like to thank Joanne for her presentation, which I hope was really clear and conveyed the aspects that you need to understand. As the applicant and as the Head of Children's Services, there are just a few points that I wanted to add to the presentation. We as a local authority have a sufficiency duty. We have a statutory responsibility to provide sufficient placements within our local authority for the children that we care for. We currently are unable to meet that duty, sadly. So out of the 382 children that we currently have looked after by our local authority, so those are children that we hold parental responsibility for, 128 of those children are placed away from Newport. And whilst for some of those children it's the right thing for them to be away from Newport, for others it is undesirable, and we clearly need to be able to fulfil our sufficiency duty to meet the needs of those children. As a local authority, we have considerable and recent experience of working towards fulfilling that duty and of managing and setting up children's homes. We have taken a very positive approach to being able to manage our own children's homes within the local authority rather than relying on private and charitable providers. And in part that's arisen because as an area we have very few third sector providers currently in our area. We only have 3 privately provided children's homes, which is very low for a city of Newport's size. Our most recent experience of setting up of a children's home, which is for 4 children, was established in January 2019 and has recently been nominated for Social Care Wales Award for Excellence and Innovation. And I wouldn't for 1 minute want to minimise that there are challenges in running children's homes. This is not an easy task for anyone to undertake. But what we do now have is a team that are experienced and are well able to provide a model of care that is on a footprint of a family environment. This is not an institution. This is not for very large numbers of children. This is for a very small setting. And that's what we would be looking to replicate at Windmill Farm. What we currently have in Newport is a provision that is largely longer term settings for children, and what we want in Windmill Farm is a place where we can offer short term provision for a small number of children, where we really get to know and understand their needs before we can then look to hopefully being able to place them in foster care across the Newport area. We have recently expanded the foster carers that we have across Newport. Just as a point of interest, in 2019-20 we approved 6 families as foster carers. Already in 2020-21 we have approved 13, so we have made significant progress in that area, which will assist in the move on from Windmill Farm. I think one of the things that I just wanted to touch on quickly as a local authority is that not only do we have a duty in terms of the quality of the care, the type of the care that we wish to offer our children, which obviously should be of the very finest quality, and that's what we set out to do. But we also have a real pressure on us, and absolutely rightly so, to ensure that we provide value for money. Currently, when we're buying external placements for children to look after them, we can be paying anything from in the region of £4,500 per week up to £16,000 a week. So the costs of these type of placements to the local authority are very considerable. And whilst providing our own residential care should not be seen as a cheap option, because obviously we want to ensure quality and we want to ensure that the staff are well trained and are well prepared, we are able to achieve significant savings when we care for our own children. So in addition to providing an environment for children that is caring and nurturing, there is a cost aspect to this application. I've already mentioned that this is very much about a family home. This is not an institution or a setting for a large number of children. This is a family environment. This is, as far as possible, trying to recreate a family setting. And I think for us, what we are really clear about is that whilst we have a spread currently across the city, children, like all of us, benefit from being an environment where they have access to the natural surroundings, they have access to a setting which gives them, if anything, just the joy of nature, I suppose, for want of a rather trite saying. But I think certainly in terms of this setting, that's what brings to our children. And whilst I recognise, I mean, obviously there could be a sense which says, wouldn't this be better off in the city? What we know is that children need space, they need time, and they need that quality which a setting like Windmill Farm will bring them. We are very clear that we have no current equivalence to this provision within Newport. As I say, our current homes are for longer term, whereas this will be for shorter periods. The advantages of children remaining in Newport, and whilst this is obviously a little bit more towards the edge of Newport than our current provision, it still means we will be able to sustain children in education in Newport with the same health facilities and where their family time, so where they do have contact with brothers, sisters, mum, dad, grandparents, we will be able to sustain that in a way that is much more effective for children than when we place them out. So overall for us, the development at Windmill Farm is about family development. It is about enabling us to meet our statutory duty in order to provide sufficient placements within our local authority area to address the deficit that we currently have between that 382 and the 128 hour out of Newport. And it is about providing a really strong quality of care to our children. We are their corporate parent and we have a duty to care for them in the best possible way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sally Ann. The next speaker, is it Councillor William Rowley, who represents the ward?
Chair, it's going to be Councillor Ray Mogford.
I do apologise.
No problem at all, thank you.
Councillor Ray Mogford, I'm sorry, I just read my paperwork and William Rowley was first, but there we are.
Well, okay, thank you, Chair. So my name is Councillor Ray Mogford. I am the ward councillor for Langstone Ward, which includes the village of Llanfacus. Today I am putting forward an objection to this planning proposal. If we look at the address of this location, it's Windmill Farm, and I think that name is important. It is a farm. It has been a farm, and it has been a farm for a long time. The planning officer, Joanne Davidson, in her talk said that for planning purposes, we must consider this as a greenfield land. So I have a number of concerns that I want to go through briefly, and Councillor Rowley will drill down on some of these concerns. So we feel that the granting of this application would have serious consequences regarding the protection of the open countryside from further developments and the erosion, particularly of sustainable farming. This has been a farm for a long time, and we feel that under the Welsh Government legislation for sustainable farming, this property is being removed from the farming domain and will have potentially a detrimental effect on the ability for new and young farmers to enter into the farming industry. There is certainly a shortage of new small holdings, small farms, and taking this out of the domain we feel would be detrimental. The granting of this application also, I think the amount of traffic that would be using Windmill Lane, which, as we have heard, is a very narrow lane, joining the village of Llanfairpwll effectively into Monmouth would add a considerable amount of traffic, and there will be, as we heard, that the children will be taken to and from school, not necessarily all to the same schools. So we have a concern there about the enhancement of the traffic flow through what is quite a small village with very, very limited access to the village. All the roads in are effectively narrow country lanes that have a number of passing points, and these passing points are heavily used. So there is congestion already in the village of Llanfairpwll at certain times. So I think in summary, that's the summary of our objections, and I will leave it there. And I will hand over an appropriate point to Councillor Routley. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Routley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. Can I thank the officers for their quite frank presentations that they've given this morning. But we must not forget, we also have a duty of care for not creating a precedent with regards to planning applications. What is being presented to you to planning committees this morning is very emotive. And don't forget, this land is council owned land. If this had been a private developer proposing to build an open green countryside, I think we would have taken off our sort of rosy coloured glasses. You know, the sustainable farming scheme, as we all know, as Councillor Montfort said, was introduced by the Welsh Government and is a part of the sustainability for this country going forward after the new era begins. The policy aim is to protect the rural farms and to sustain food production, therefore helping to alleviate, Mr. Chairman, the climate emergency and reversing the decline in biodiversity. The applicant does not support the farming as such it is, and will not support the rural communities and the people of Wales going forward in the future. As I said, we also have a duty of care. The development is not served by a public sewer. There is no apparent consideration given to this application, and which requires a sensitivity of the groundwater. The secondary treatment with question marks raised about effluent as to whether or not it is suitable discharge within the protection zone. This site actually falls within the Special Protection Zone 1. The sustainability of transport links. Well, any application is judged on sustainability. There isn't any. This doesn't meet any of the criteria with regards to that whatsoever. But let's go back to the environment. Let's go back to the Welsh Government's lead on this and their advice to us. Their advice to us is to encourage and sustain the environment. There are many farming grants available now to encourage farming, but there's not enough farms so young farmers can access these grants. We cannot afford to take this outside. The only reason this development is before you today is because it's a quick fix. It's not the right fix for the area. It's a quick fix for the owners of this land. And the owners of this land haven't put a great deal of thought into where they're placing it. Integration, not isolation. This is going to house not 6, but 10. It may start as short term, but there's no guarantee it won't transfer. You will create a precedence going forward. What's good for them is good for the private sector as well. But it's bad for these children and their future, because without sustainable farming, they will have no future,
Come on, don't break down.
I think we've lost Councillor Routley, Chair.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody's trying to get him back, so we can just hang fire. In the building.
No, I have tennis, sorry. I think he is. I think they did. I think Neil did say that he was.
Perhaps.
Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do apologise. Technology has failed me today. So, as I was saying, the sustainability of this is not straightforward. There have been many emotive arguments placed. We've discussed the traffic impact. We've discussed the unsustainability of meeting the transport regulations. There are no shops. It's totally isolated. There's no integration. There's segregation. We're hiding these away. And there's no protection for the future because this will expand and you've created a dangerous precedent. So let's not be led by emotive. Let's judge this as if it was a private entity asking to come in and take one of the farms out of use, and then I don't know, from then on in, I'm not quite sure, Chairman, but from then on in we lose the battle. This is not acceptable. I want to see these children rehoused in Wales, but I want to see the environment protected. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I'm sorry that technology has sort of failed us today, or failed me, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Routley. Thank you very much. Could I just ask before I pass it to committee for their full consideration, Joanne Davidson, do you wish to come back and clarify any points that have been raised thus far?
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, lots of points raised by the local ward councillors. All I would say is I'll repeat the fact that all the land outside the built area of the farm will remain in agricultural use. I was out there last week and it is used for sheep grazing. The farm is vacant, the farmhouse is vacant, but all the land there is in agricultural use, and that will not change. The agricultural potential we've discussed at paragraph 8.4 of the officer report, if members want to just read that through. And regarding aquifers and sewerage and drainage generally, we deal with that at paragraphs 8.2.1 and 8.5 of the officer report, if members would like to look at those. That's it though, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Right, committee. I've got an indication from Councillor Dudley to speak. Councillor Dudley.
Thank you, Chair. Hang on a minute.
You're on mute, Councillor Dudley.
Right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Right. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. Can I start by saying that I agree with everything that the two local councillors have already said. I do have a number of questions, and I will go into detail in a little while. You say this is going to be a family home if it's short term. How do the children then relate to a family if they're not going to be there very long? And I would like to know what the feelings are of the local people. And mainly, I should say that I have had previous experience over the case of Forest Lodge some years ago. Are you still able to hear me?
Yes, you carry on.
Right. Okay. In which time there was a great deal of local antipathy against the application there. In a similar situation, this was Forest Lodge, which is very close to a farm just across the road. They experienced quite a number of problems with the children, sometimes interfering with the animals, sometimes interfering with the buildings and causing damage. The number of children there were about the same number as is intended here. We did have a lot of problems with the children absconding. Sometimes they were found up in the roof or in the attic, but this involved a number of police being taken off their normal duties in order to look for these children who did cause problems. Granted, it's been very quiet of late, but I do wonder whether or not sometimes things aren't put about that could be. The problem is that when the children did abscond, it involved the police being taken off their normal duties, and that then wasn't just a sort of a 5-minute jobby. It was sometimes many hours and occasionally a few days. There is no entertainment in the local area for these children. Having the sort of thing that you would have built in, i.e. with table tennis and that sort of thing, I honestly don't think that the children will be that interested for that long. So in this case, because of the experience that we've already had here in Rogerstone, I can't support this application.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Dudley. The next person indicating wishing to speak is Councillor Richard White.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Dudley has raised a few concerns that I have. To get back to the sort of more planning issues, the annex and the parking area, are they being built in open countryside? Because if so, I know of other cases where developments have been stopped in open countryside. The other question, the extension, is it over the 30% rule for extensions in the countryside? Another concern is the traffic. It says, I think in the report that, or it hints in the report that agricultural traffic will cease and the traffic for this home will increase the numbers slightly, but it appears that from the report and from what I've seen that there's access to the agricultural land off this road anyway, so I can't see how the agricultural traffic will decrease. That's enough from me now for the moment, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor White. Next person indicating, Councillor Carmel Townsend.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, fine.
Yeah. I apologise for joining late. My I don't know, my technology was all over the place this morning. I couldn't get on at all. Anyway, I was just going to ask, first of all, is this the house we visited as a site visit a short while ago, probably over a year ago?
That would be a question for someone from the
Joanne.
Chair, I can answer that. It's Sally Jenkins. Yes, it is the site that you visited as part of the Corporate Parenting Forum. Thank you.
Yeah, I think personally, considering it's for a small number of children, when we visited, I thought it was an ideal site. And if the farm is still continuing to work, I don't really see that there's a problem at all, as long as it's looked after properly and the children are happy, just like the children at Rose Cottage. I don't see a problem at all.
Okay, thank you, Carmel.
Okay.
Next, contributor, Councillor James Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a few points. First of all, it's been mentioned that the need for this scheme and for the social care and safeguarding for local children. And I think this is the ideal opportunity, especially with the numbers which are outside Newport. And I think that's hugely important, and they will be still close to their families if needed and necessary. And we have a responsibility to the children of Newport. I would have thought we would all agree to that. There's also a mention regarding the narrow path, the narrow drive, which I believe was addressed by there's going to be a passing bay put in place. And I think, you know, the outdoor environment for children, young, possibly vulnerable children, is hugely important to have that and have that opportunity. And I'm slightly sort of looking at some of the comments regarding issues of objections, and as you know, I'm slightly concerned that the council owns other land. This could be somewhere else. There's another one. The water supply in the house is routed via my land, and I will cut off the water if permission is granted. I would ask if that's even possible, and sort of how disappointing that is, as Newport is meant to be looking after the vulnerable residents. Llanfairpwll has many old and vulnerable residents who will be at risk of antisocial behaviour. What's that based on? I'm not even sure what that's based on. So hugely disappointed there. And finally, Councillor Routley mentioned that he and I understand his view. He wants to see children rehoused in Wales. My view is I want to see children from Newport rehoused in Newport, and this is that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dudley, could you put your camera off, please, because you're still on screen? No, you. Yeah. You know the button. That's the one, is it? Yeah. Thank you very much. The next speaker then is Tracy Holyoke, and Charles Ferris, if you could stand by. Thank you. Tracy.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I really want to speak on behalf of the children. I haven't worked in the care industry for 15 years with looked after children and opening my doors to the children. I see firsthand how the impact fares with the children when they're placed out of county. I have seen children torn from families have to go out to county whereby you know, we really should be leading the way. We've seen that one of our long-term settings is up for award of great standard, and I believe that we continue to provide that great standard. A family setting, even for short term with these children, means that they can come, they can settle, they can be in a place that's peaceful with a great outdoor environment, still understanding workings of the farms, and gathering, you know, just solace, really. I mean, these children are our most vulnerable, and I believe that we should be providing that care setting. It's a natural surrounding. It gives them space and time. You know, the care workers that work with the families provide an outstanding care for the children. We've heard how it's Greenfield, about traffic, about duty of care, of not creating a precedence, where actually I believe we should be setting a precedence. We should be setting a precedence for our most vulnerable children within our society. You know, I've seen firsthand where we've placed children in these settings, how they thrive, and sometimes, you know, it brings the child back to the understanding of what's kind of gone wrong in their life, and that gives them, you know, that is because they're in an environment where they have the peace and tranquility to be able to move forward from troubled backgrounds. So I've seen nothing really that would persuade me not to go against this development, because I believe it's necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Charles Ferris. Thank you, Charles.
Am I on? Yes. Thank you, Chairman. We've mentioned about the objections, but there's a volume of objection, isn't there? There's 39 objections, which, after all, when you consider an area like Llanfairpwllgwyngyllgogerychus, it's only a dot on the map. So the local community obviously is extremely unhappy about this proposal. The remoteness of the site is mentioned, and Councillor Dudley raised the point about the possibility of children absconding. Now, let's hope that doesn't happen. But if children were to abscond, I mean, you've got the wilds of Wentwood there abutting this site, more or less. Children would then be, if they did abscond, they would be in an area where they would be very, very vulnerable. It's such a, well, it's probably the only wilderness we've got in the area. I doubt the wisdom of citing this care facility for children there, given that the fact it's just too remote, too far away, and it is, after all, unsustainable, which is a factor which we're encouraged to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ferris. Next speaker indicating Councillor John Guy. John.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened intently to everything that's been said. I read all the report, listened to the report by the planning officer. The big thing that comes out of this, we have a personal responsibility. I can see nothing in any of the presentations undermining the report. Keeping to the planning issues. The planning issues have been covered. I won't go over them all again, but there have been a lot of issues have been looked at, been covered. I fully support this application. It's a responsibility to us, to the community, and I think that the actual application, all the points have been considered thoroughly and been covered. So in finalisation, I fully support the application.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Next person indicating is Councillor Jason Jordan. Jason.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, does what Councillor Clark have said. I mean, it is a bit disheartening that we got to find places for our children to go to. I'd like to find out as well. We did say it was 382 children we were looked after, and 128 were placed away from Newport. That means there's 254 children we've got around the Newport area, I think, or maybe, but only using this development for 4 to 6 children, which don't sound a lot, but I think we could do a little bit more. Also, he did mention as well, but about some of the reporters often off the residents as well, and about the water supply as well, routed off on his land, and you'll take necessary action to try to stop that going ahead, which I find that quite disturbing, actually. You know, their children, for God's sake, I mean, you know, they need to be looked after. And also, like Charles has said as well, going back as well, you know, 100 meters from the site, only 3 properties were from the site, but 39 people responded to it, you know, and there's more than one response, you know. As we look at a normal development plan as well, around, even for a normal house, you know, we do often the 50-meter radius and that, but this is so far out of the way from people, you know. I can't see there being a problem as well. You know, we've got to look after the children as well. I also noticed as well there, something to do about a gentleman's agreement of some sort. I'd like to clarify what is that gentleman's agreement as well on this application, which I found. I think it was down through on some of the residents' mentioned something about a gentleman's agreement as well, which I find, which, yeah, on 6.2 actually, where it came to revenues on the thing, it said the water supply and foul drainage, the farm relies upon a gentleman's agreement. You know, I think could somebody clarify that for me as well. But yeah, you know, as far as the children are concerned, you know, we do need more stuff for the children. It's not very nice to see children being put in this situation, as much as we all know this, but you know, and also I want to find out better the land as well, around the development as well. I know it's agricultural land. Does that Newport City Council own that land as well?
Okay, thank you, Jason. If you just bear with us, I'll call the officer back in at the end to answer some of the points that you've raised. Thank you very much. Councillor Val Dudley, you've indicated.
Thank you, Chair. Hold on. Technology and I don't get on. Could you remind me again of the ages of the children which are expected to be in this facility, please?
I think it could be up to the age of 18, which is our local legal responsibility to children in care.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I agree with Councillor Ferris that it's in a way out location, and our experience was with the previous situation, as I explained, was that some of the older children weren't happy being in a country area. They weren't interested. They wanted town life and town entertainments type of thing. And I fully understand the feeling of the residents, because I look back many years to the residents in Monmouth, where the children who were then later transferred to Forest Lodge lived, and the problems that they experienced at the time that they were there in Monmouth. I agree that we need these placements for children, but I don't think, judging from what has gone before in my own area, that children of this type of age need to be in a country area. They're not interested. They're interested in their computers. They're interested in the things that town life can offer. And I grant you that they shouldn't be out in the evenings in town life. But at the same time, are we giving the children what they actually need by placing them in a country environment, in addition to the fact of the problems that I raised before? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dudley. There's no one else indicating. I don't know whether the officer wants to come back in and answer a few of the points raised. Joanne?
Chair, it's Councillor Watkins. I can't get the hand to indicate up on my machine for some reason.
I can hear you, so I assume everybody else can. Councillor Watkins, so you carry on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry about this. I had trouble yesterday for a meeting which I was at. One question has been asked, and that's, does the agricultural land still remain in council hands? And are there any listed buildings on the site? And in regards to the planning, I believe the planning application doesn't matter who owned it, whether we sold it off or not, they could still develop up to a certain percentage of the application. I am concerned at the fact that we've got 128 children in care outside of Newport. I'm shocked at that. I'm rather surprised. That's really all I've got, Chair, at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Joanne, do you wish to come back, please? Oh, Councillor Holyoke, I do apologise. You've just come on the screen. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up on some of Val's comments, really. I mean, we have some children talking about not being happy. We have so many children where their neurons are so underdeveloped. They need exactly that environment. They need a country environment. They don't need to be raised in towns. We talk about absconding. Well, you know, wherever we house these children, especially in cities, we have a high number now of children being trafficked. So I believe a country setting is a much more cleaner, calmer environment for these children to grow up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Olio. Thank you. Anyone else before I call the officer back in, please? Oh, Councillor Val Dudley again, over to you. Councillor Dudley, you're on.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree. The principle of housing the children in the countryside environment is very good, but on the experiences that we had, the children weren't happy to be away from the sort of life that they'd experienced before. And I do agree that we need to be housing these children. I don't think that this is the right place to put them, personally.
Okay. Councillor Berry, I've got your picture on my screen, but you're not on the list to speak. Do you wish to speak, Graham?
Yes, if you can hear me. I've been trying to get in, actually. I'm not too sure what's not working for me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, yes.
Okay, I must declare that I speak from a position of privilege here, because I was myself a looked after child, and I have 2 adopted children of my own. Plus, I lived in Llanfacres for more than 4 years. The address was Fernley. I'm quite sure those who are local will know it. It was an ideal environment. It was beautiful. There's no way I could say anything negative about it, not even the traffic that came rattling past my door. I only left there to go somewhere else and with my work. I must say that it's an ideal location, it really is, and that I do understand the fears, etc. of the locality. But there were lots of children there when my children were there, because they used to play in the park behind. I wholeheartedly endorse this and would look forward to seeing that home thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Thank you. Does the officer wish to come back in? Sorry. Joanne, any points you wish to clarify?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, there are elements of what has been discussed that really isn't my professional expertise, and I'm not going to comment on that in terms of the management of the home. Obviously, I'm focusing on the planning aspects. So the report itself is very detailed, and I've tried to steer the members to the relevant paragraphs as queries have been raised. You've obviously all seen the neighbour responses, which are at paragraph 6.1. As I said, I'm not best placed to talk about the family environment, supervision, management, etc. of the home, or the reasons why the application has been made by the relevant council department. Councillor White asked whether the annex, the parking and the circulation area was outside the curtilage. The annex is predominantly inside the curtilage, so it does result in a minor enlargement of the curtilage, and when I say minor, I mean minor. The parking and circulation space is outside, so that's why we referred to that as being greenfield. But what we've said is that the parking and circulation space, in fact, everything other than that very minor extension required to accommodate the annex, is within the built footprint of the farm complex as it currently stands. The land immediately surrounding the proposed site is within the council's ownership and will continue to be farmed. One of the councillors, sorry, I've forgotten, who mentioned that they'd noticed that there will be an access created as part of the upgrade of the track to the land to be retained in agricultural use. That's right. They also pointed to the fact that we will continue to have agricultural traffic potentially alongside the house, the home. And yes, I did mention that, I believe, in my presentation, but Nonetheless, we're not denying that this is an unsustainable location. We've accepted that there will be a worsening in traffic terms, but as I've mentioned in the presentation, this is a planning judgment to be balanced. So we have a policy objection on sustainability, but we also have planning merits. There are material considerations in the determination process that are relayed through our written report and through the presentation. Just one final point, and I think again it was Councillor White that raised this. We've touched on the issue of permitted development, both in the report and in the presentation. I haven't gone through the process of measuring the volume of the existing farmhouse and comparing it to the volume of the extended farmhouse, I'll be honest with you, but permitted development rights for householders are very generous, not only in terms of the extension of the main house, but also outbuildings. For example, a house can be extended to the side up to 50% width of the front elevation width, 4 meters high. It can be extended at the rear, 4 meters deep, 4 meters high, but all of that is only within 2 meters of the boundary. If it's not within 2 meters of the boundary, the height limit is much greater. Outbuildings can't cover more than 50% of the curtilage, and again, there's comparable height extensions. So if someone really wanted to go to town and make a point on this site in terms of what they could do with permitted development rights, they could do something quite significant, and we would have no control over it whatsoever, and potentially result in a rather ad hoc design scheme. Hopefully, Chair, that's it. I'm hoping that all the other queries are covered in the report, or I've already covered in the presentation, but let me know if not. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Joanne. Is the committee prepared to vote? Is someone prepared to propose something, please?
Chair, I propose that we accept the application as given to us by the planning officer.
Okay, is somebody prepared to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, is that this be granted with conditions. Okay, are you all prepared to vote? It'll be a physical vote now, and Democratic Services will take over from here, if that's the right expression, and they'll call on you to indicate whether you're in favour of the proposal or against.
Can you hear me, John?
Well, I can. Yes, I can.
Sorry, because I have somebody at the door about the water being brown. Sorry, I'm. Oh, okay, fine.
Okay, I hope your brown waters get sorted out then.
I hope I haven't got any brown water.
Could I ask for someone from Democratic Services to come online and organise the vote, please?
Sure thing. Councillor John Guy.
For the application.
Thank you. Councillor Graham Berry.
For.
Councillor Trevor Watkins.
For the application.
Councillor Charles Ferris.
Against the application.
Councillor Jason Jordan.
For.
Councillor Tracy Hollyoak.
For.
Councillor Carmel Townsend.
For the application.
And Councillor Val Dudley.
Could you hear me?
Oh, hi, Councillor. Sorry.
Sorry. Against.
Chair, that's 5 for and 3 against.
Sorry, Neil, it's Councillor Clark. Do I get a
sorry,
vote?
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I'm for.
Councillor Richard White. Against.
And the chair, please.
Councillor Richards, 4.
Sorry, Chair, did you hear my answer?
Yes.
Yes, we did, Councillor. So
Right.
we've got 7 for the application and 4 against.
I make that 8, Neil.
8. Apologies, 8.
8 for, 3 against.
Yeah, sorry, that's right.
Yeah, that's what I've got as well. 8 for, 3 against. So the officer's recommendation is carried. Thank you all very much. We now move on to item 2 on your agenda, which is on page 32 of your paperwork. It's application number 20-0496. The site is 43 Newbury Lane, Newport. The ward is Malpas. The ward members are councillors David Mayer, Jane Mudd and James Clark. And the presenting officer is Joanne Davidson again. Over to you, Joanne, please. Thank you. Oh, there's no public speaker, no ward member speaker. So over to you, Joanne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd be grateful if you could confirm that you can see my slides.
Yes, confirm.
Yes, I can. Yeah, I can confirm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any chance of enlarging it?
Need to put it as a slideshow.
No, right. You can borrow my magnifying glass later if you wish.
I've already got one, but still can't see some of the drawings.
Okay, bear with me a moment.
The slideshow. From current slide. Okay.
That's better.
Yes, that's much better.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Val, we hear
Oh,
you.
that's all right, because sometimes it seems to come and go. Thank you.
No.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, the proposal is for works of excavation and construction of retaining walls to facilitate the provision of a ground floor garage and store, with the garage roof to be used as a raised patio area. Also includes the conversion of the existing garage and provision of a new access onto Grove Park Drive, the retention of access steps and fencing facing onto Grove Park Drive. So hopefully you can see now the slide which shows the application site hatched in blue. Newbury Lane runs along here. Hopefully you can see my cursor as well, and Grove Park Drive runs along here. An aerial view. This is the house we're looking at. Okay. I should mention that the item was called to committee by Councillor Mayer to consider the relationship between the proposed design and the street scene in the interest of residential amenity. It's proposed to convert the existing garage, which is considered acceptable in principle, and the existing parking occurs on the drive here. So in front of you now you should be able to see the existing layout and the proposed layout. This is the garage to be converted. Parking occurs to the front and that won't change. So the parking area will remain. The proposal also includes the excavation of the front garden, so this area, and the erection of retaining walls to create a new garage. So this is a new garage created at basement level, and on top of the garage the applicants want to use it as a raised patio. Okay, let me take you through these slides first, probably easier. So this is the front elevation facing Newbury Lane as you see it now. So here's the garage to be converted. This is the elevation to Grove Park Drive. So hopefully this will help you appreciate the difference in levels. that allows, or requires, I should say, that excavation work to occur here at this, well, it's ground floor, but they're going to cut into the bank at the front here to create the new garage. This is the current side elevation. Again, appreciating those changes in level and the slope along Grove Park Drive. We're looking at the side boundary treatment, which is also part of this application. This is the proposed elevations to be considered. So you can see straight away the change on the front elevation, replacing the garage door with a pedestrian door and window. You can also see this change, which is the introduction of that new garage set into the bank in front of the dwelling, with that patio area enclosed here. As I say, the area in front of the old garage will remain for parking. This is the new view proposed from Grove Park Drive. So you can see that extension to the front, as I say, set into the slope, so will require retaining structures, and then that patio area on the roof. This is a plan again of the side elevation showing the side boundary treatment, and the photographs at the top of this slide are taken from inside the garden to help you appreciate again the difference in levels between the garden and the highway. Okay, this is the proposed ground floor plan. So here you can see that new garage with a store extension. This is the first floor layout, again just showing that we'll see the retention of the parking in front of the garage here, and this will have a balustrade along it, so it can be used as a patio type area. This is a larger layout plan of the site, including, or main points to note over and above what I've already mentioned, is that the boundary treatment to Grove Park Drive will be set in for much of its length. So this is the actual line of the fence and wall that you saw on that side elevation. It splays out and alongside the pavement here, and then is proposed to splay to enhance visibility, and those dashed lines that you can see are indicative of the visibility achievable at this new point of access off Grove Park Drive. So as a point of clarification, we've got the existing parking to be retained here, we've got new parking to be created in the proposed garage, and we've got new parking created off the existing access. So in short, plenty of parking. This is the or some photographs of the house. This is a front view taken from Newbury Lane. Again, looking at it from the front. Okay, you can see the existing parking as I've mentioned, and this, or these are taken from Grove Park Drive, to show really how that topography works in practice. We've seen it on the plans, but it's always nice to see it on the photograph. So Newbury Lane continues to rise up along here. And some photographs now of that boundary enclosure. That is it in situ. So that is to be retained. You can see the splay and where it actually adjoins the footpath in this section. And this photograph really is to give you a perspective along Grove Park Drive, and really our intention with that was to enable you to see that on the other side of the carriageway, we do have high means of boundary enclosure, wall and fencing, and that is nothing unusual in this location. And largely arises, as I say, because of the topographical layout. You'll see from your reports that we have received some letters of support, but also an objection. With regard to the roof of the garage being used as a raised patio area, that's going to be approximately 25 metres from the adjacent property at 41 Newbury Lane, which is in this photograph. And obviously we've got the intervening road in between, and we consider that relationship entirely acceptable. With regards to the other neighbouring property on the other side of the site, which is number 45 Newbury Lane, we also consider that relationship acceptable. Now, part of the area would be screened by the existing garage, and any views that would not be screened by the garage would be screened by the mature vegetation that exists along the common boundary between those two properties. The raised patio would be located over 10 metres from the front of number 45, which consists of a small amenity space and a driveway. And the amenity space at the front of number 45 is not its primary amenity space. So overall, officers have considered that the impact on neighbouring amenity of the garage and the associated raised patio are acceptable. The garage would project forward of the principal elevation of the property. You may realise that the house extensions and domestic outbuildings supplementary planning guidance that we've adopted states that front extensions are unacceptable in principle because they tend to be very prominent in a streetscape, and only really will the council consider allowing proposals of this nature. Now, whilst the two neighbouring properties to the south are of the same design, the other surrounding properties consist of mixed design and scale, and the area lacks architectural consistency. You can see it really in the photograph on the screen now. So despite the garage projecting forward of the principal elevation of the property, given the slope nature of the land around it, it will sit within the slope and would not result in an unduly dominant or unsympathetic addition to the streetscape, and would not result in a harmful impact on visual amenity. In order to access the new garage, it's proposed to create a driveway just where the gentleman is walking there on that photograph. It's proposed to create a driveway and new access of Grove Park Drive, and it's considered that adequate visibility displays are achievable. Suitable drainage is shown. The driveway is of an adequate length and the garage is of an acceptable size. The fencing and steps, as I've mentioned, have already been erected on the side of the property facing Grove Park Drive, and the application seeks to retain those works. The fencing ranges in height from 1.8 metres high to 3 metres high and runs for a length of 18.7 metres down the side of the property. Now, the majority of the fencing would be set back approximately 2 metres from the back of the pavement with intervening steps. You can see them on this photograph. Now, during a more recent site visit, we've noted that some landscaping has already been placed in between the fence and this retainer next to the pathway, and therefore already having a positive effect in terms of softening the appearance of the boundary treatment. So, subject to the conditions set out in the officer report, it's recommended that the application be granted, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Joanne. Over to the committee. Councillor Berry, do you wish to speak?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, Chair. Does the ward member have to speak first or no?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that actually.
I do apologise. You're all on form today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
If you press your button, James, and I'll know then, won't I?
Yeah, have you got me?
Yes, you're through loud and clear.
Okay. Obviously, looking at this application, there's sort of I think it's a good. It's been presented well. Obviously, looking at representations, there's a lot of positives, but there are some negatives. One of the questions I sort of would need to ask is in regard to 45 Newbury Lane's objections. And again, Joan, I'm sorry if you covered this, but it's got the loss of privacy, that the change of use of the existing garage would open up a direct line sight from the garage window into our bedroom window. Could you expand on that, and is that correct?
Joanne, thank you.
Okay, sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
Ooh, bear with me. Oh dear, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen now. Sorry, Councillor, I will answer you. Yes, they did raise that as a concern. The existing garage has a window facing number 45. That exists. That's already there. And the main thing I would say about that is that the garage conversion in itself, I shouldn't ordinarily require consent. So garage conversions shouldn't ordinarily need to be applied for. Nonetheless, they have included it. If that is a concern for members, it isn't a concern for us, mainly because it's forward of number 45. It's not affecting a particularly private area. However, there is no issue in principle with us imposing a condition that obscure glazes that window. Should that be of concern?
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Councillor James Clark, you've got a comment further?
Yeah, Joan, thanks for the clarification. That's sort of just one of my views. So it'll be interesting to see what the other councillors now, what their views are. But if that is a possibility, it's something which if others agree on, could be recommended. But I'll wait to hear what the others have got to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Richard White.
Thank you, Chair. My concerns relate to the construction. Did I interpret the drawing right, that the garage store, the new garage store, is right up to the back of footpath? What measures are there in place to protect what I thought I saw was a lamppost in that region, and also the public footpath from any collapses? I also noticed that the design